Hi there, Giel here. This is Can You Feel It episode 9 already of the first series, because I think we have to coming back with a new series. If you would like us to come back, well, feel free to share which DJ or producer you would like to have here on this show. And thank you so much for sharing the content, because a lot of people there are just starting with Armin and Ferry and Don Diablo and Laidback Luke, well, the whole series. Now it's time for a guy here. He lives in Amsterdam. He used to live in the east of Holland, then in The Hague, in London. He's kind of like the Dutch founding father of progressive house. Sander Kleinenberg. He's talking about how he was on the loose, this complete new journey in brand new music. It was like a counterculture he's talking about, but suddenly it went commercial, and he made that's a really funny story. He made a Daft Punk soundalike, and it completely tanked. Yeah, the DJ life took his toll. He's talking about his classics, his remixes, and he still has some ambitious goals. Enjoy it. Sander Kleinenberg.
Can you feel it? Feel it? Can you feel it?
It's the music of millions of people all over the world. Electronic dance music. In Holland we call it house music. It was my history. It was my youth. These were my records. Who am I? I'm Giel Belen, a Dutch radio DJ. And I want to share and explore my musical history with you, together with the biggest DJs. As you probably know, most of them come from Holland. Why is that? This little country in the west of Europe. And how did they all start? Can You Feel It? The story of a Dutch DJ from the bedroom to the festival.
Check this out.
This is going to be a dance trip down memory lane. Met Sander Kleinenberg, with Sander Klein. Yeah, you made this joke with your label. Like, what was it? Little Mountain?
Yeah, Little Mountain Recordings.
But
I still get like people who go like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Oh, that's great, dude.
And how? But how do they pronounce it? Like Kleinenberg.
Yeah, they say Kleinenberg.
Kleinenberg. Yeah, okay.
Depends where you are.
Our native language is Dutch, but for this podcast we'll speak English, or at least I'll try. But for our Dutch listeners, do you still have some specific Dutch things? Food, for example, you always you still want, because, well, of course we are now here in Amsterdam in your own studio, in your own house actually. But well, you've seen the whole world. Is there like a specific Dutch thing?
Well, sometimes a little zakje drop.
Zakje drop
comes with us on the plane. Yeah.
Yeah. Drop.
Love it. Drop is that, and people when you try and make an American go and taste specifically when it's like a double salted, like real, like they just go like, guys, apart from Black Pete, you're seriously deranged if you think this is nice.
Exactly.
And just imagine about thinking about like that little black, salty. It's weird.
Yeah, that's for us.
And for us, it's like, no, that's normal. Just like Black Pete. It's like,
Oh no.
No, let's not go there.
No, but I was wondering that, well, in the dance music, the drop is a whole other thing.
The drop is another thing.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
But okay, let's start with the EDM, the earliest dance memory. So. You already were a DJ playing several kind of music.
I started in 86, 87.
Oh, that's this little cat. Sorry, what's his name?
Oh wow, okay. This is Melkje. This is the drop. No, this is Melkje. He is found on the street near a bar that was called Milk Snor. Milk Mustache. So we call. Well, our youngest daughter called her Melkje.
Okay,
So started back in 86, 87, and the DJ that left my school, my high school, became a friend of mine because I was interested in music, and then he, moved on to a different school, and I had still 2 years to go, and he's like, you should take over my job, because he was the high school DJ, the prom DJ. He DJ'd at all those parties, that we threw once a year, twice a year at school, where you get your first kiss and stuff. And it was it was cool because it was a job that not only entitled like DJing at the gig, but it was like buy the records. So the school would give you like
Wow.
25 guilders, and you would have to go and buy the hottest records. So you have to and you had to be quite careful what you would buy, because they have to stand the test of time, and be in the collection for, so it was a great job with lots of responsibility. And for me at that point. And then I moved on to becoming a DJ in a club. On the brink of turning 16, I DJed at this club, which was like 15 kilometers on a bike outside my house, my parents' house, and that's how it kind of started.
And that was in Delft, near Rotterdam.
No, this was literally. I mean, I was born in Delft, but I grew up in Twente.
Oh, okay.
And so the city I lived was Almelo.
All right.
And the little village I DJed at was called Frieseveen, which is which like I said, which is around the corner from
Okay, so you were playing. What was played in those days?
Yes, exactly. So I played like anything. Just top 40 music.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would moderate. I would talk to records. I'd go like, hey, welkom in Bar 65. Weet je wel. Lisa heeft vandaag de verjaardag. Weet je wel. Daar gaan we allemaal een biertje op drinken en verder leuke avond.
Any requests?
Any request, and I would play. I would literally play like classics, and it was like the village bar. So it's like everybody would come there between 15 and 35 or even 45, and you would so the idea was you have to entertain all those people. So I would have like 10 minutes. The bar owner was like, you can have 10 minutes of playing heavy metal. And there could be like the last 15 minutes of the night you could play certain records like Anthrax and some other shit that they loved, and then so it was really like sort of please everybody.
And then this new kind of music came.
I mean, house music made its entry into mostly through there was sort of like a left-wing radio station, not a left-wing, but it's a difficult thing to explain to people who don't live in the Netherlands. But I think one of the fundaments of the success of Dutch DJs was its radio stations, because we had what's called every sort of signature that we have in society in terms of religion or in terms of political color would have its own
broadcast company.
Exactly. And some of them were quite sort of on the left side of things, like on and specifically a company called VPRO, and they would have the Wednesday, and Wednesdays was like I don't know, it was like a couple of DJs probably from around Amsterdam that would broadcast what they would think was were the hottest records in the world at that particular moment. And they would play anything from obscure weird sort of German industrial music to new beat from Belgium, which was like this new sort of electronic type music, but they would also play punk records from London, and they mix it all together. And that was probably the first moment where I heard electronic music played, and the first place where I heard electronic music played.
Do you still know a song that you were listening like, oh, this is?
Well, I think there was one record called Taste of Sugar.
Taste of Sugar.
Yes. 1, 2, 3.
Not really sure what the band was called, but it was a new beat record.
Yeah, okay.
That was played on that somewhere around 87. But you would also have, and
it was more a Belgium thing.
It was a Belgian thing, 100% Belgian thing. Yeah. And I had no idea what I just enjoyed listening to it. And they would play Kraftwerk, and they would play Tangerine Dream, and some more sort of like obscure electronic, sort of pre-electronic, bands, Depeche Mode, and within that, the mix of what that Wednesday was, I think it was called Villa Achterwerk. I think that was the program's name, and his name is Ron Flonfon. So one of those guys. You probably know them, or but that mixed with what Ferry Maat did on the Thursday, which was he would broadcast on the Dutch radio, which was a different station, a bit more commercial. I think it was Tros, TROS, which was a bit more, I guess a bit more right-wing, but he played club music from America on Thursday nights, and he had done for a while, and it kind of sort of was in that phase between disco, R&B, and house music, and with producers like Teddy Riley, and it was an incredible time because disco was kind of dead, but it was kind of morphed into this new thing, which is really exciting. Shep Pettibone, some really great producers, and he would have at 8:30 every Thursday night, he would have a thing where a Dutch DJ would come in and do a mini mix. So he'd do 15 minutes or 20 minutes of a mix of the hottest club records in the world at that particular moment.
The Bond van Doorstarters.
The Bond van Doorstarters, the BVD. Yeah. And it was just, the BVD stood also for Binnenlandse Veiligheidsdienst. I mean, everything about it was just, everything about it was just incredible. And I, as a young, enthusiastic, sort of curious dude, would get all these messages from the radio on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then try and translate that into Fridays, and obviously meet a lot of resistance, because it's like when I played Taste of Sugar or played New Beat in that club for 5 minutes, I mean, it's like a rural area, so some of these, let's say, farm people that would come up to me and go like, dude,
what is
can
this?
you play UB40? Or because this is not even music, So, not to say that I then felt like, oh yeah, I'm onto something, but that was the kind of first sort of step into me morphing into who I am today, and that struggle of convincing people and going like, yeah, but you have to listen to this because it's like, this is a new way of getting a message across, and it's brilliant, and it's the start of a journey.
Yeah, and was there in that time, so in the east of the Netherlands, also a time when you thought, okay, now I'm going to do a whole set of this new...
No, there was no way. No. I think the owner of that club gave me like at one point 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had a real raver back in those days would wear Doc Martens and weird. It kind of looked like a punk looking back at it now, but it was like, you would wear Doc Martens, have a Smiley t-shirt on, and then I would have 2 or 3 accomplices on with me on that night, and they would be around the DJ booth and they'd like listen to the pop music that I had to play for 99% of the time, and they just waited for that one moment where that one record would be played, and they could like act if they would be in a rave for those 10 minutes. And that's kind of like how it started.
And you were still at school, I guess?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Although when I started DJing, it wasn't very long after where I was like, okay. Yes.
Was there a specific moment where you thought, okay, I'm going to be full-time DJ?
That's a good question. I remember calling my dad, but now we're going fast forward, like 15 years later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I had a record out in '96 that became an underground hit record or club record club hit in New York, and Strictly Rhythm wanted to license it, and so I got a call from my record label, and they were like, Strictly Rhythm wants to license this record. And I remembered going like, all right, okay, this is it. So I called my dad, and I'm like, I think this is a career.
Yeah. Okay, but let's.
But it's 15 years later. Yeah.
So let's take a small step to the moment you were becoming the guy who played house music all night long. I mean, where was that?
Well, so I was 18, 19, and I was experimenting. I was, I would smoke hashish, and I would hang out with a sort of like a group of people who try to sort of live outside of what everybody expected you to be, like in a normal situation. Yeah. And I experimented left and right with drugs, and I got inspired by this thing called ecstasy, which back in '88 and '89, a bit later, I guess, around the the '90s, was an incredible. I mean, it was like this incredible journey that you just had to be a part of. So I did for a while, and then that kind of journey sort of made me go like, I'm not really interested anymore in pop music. I just want to be involved in this incredible journey that this mixture of all these elements can create, for people.
And did you go to parties?
I went to I went to raves. I went to see Westbam in Germany. It was one of the early DJs in Germany, and I saw Sven Bath back in those days, also in Germany. The Almelo and Frieseveen, the villages and the city I grew up in are really near Germany, so it was kind of the focus point for when you would go out and party. And it was like an emerging thing, and I fell in love with that culture. I fell in love with everything about it, and I fell in love with and taking my DJ heritage with me into that culture and understanding that, you could mix those things together. And I dropped out of everything. Like I didn't have any regular DJ jobs anymore because I was too sort of, I was just too involved with dance music. But then again, in my sort of the place where I grew up, no one was interested in, a DJ that didn't, moderate the records or play something else than just dance music. It was a really alien phenomenon.
Obscure thing. Okay. And when came, what was the moment you thought, okay, maybe I'm going to try to make it?
Well, so I started producing music, or at least be involved in the production process. I was sort of part of a clique of people that I grew up with, that were all in some form interested. Like one was a promoter, and one was a drug dealer, and one was a, you know what I mean? It's and the other one was a fellow DJ, and then someone else was more involved in the production side of things, and then we all knew, it's in Dutch it's called a wijkcentrum, which means like a community center that we would all hang out in, and that there would be one local community center employee that was interested in recording music, and he had a mixing desk, and so slowly but surely I got introduced to all these different elements. And then I remember there was a producer from Rotterdam called Ricky the Dragon, and he would come with his MPC in the back of his car, and he had to flee Rotterdam. I think there was probably something why he had to ended up in Almelo, but he was there to hide from something or whatever. And I remember vividly he had an MPC 60, which you could compose records and had multi-track MIDI possibilities. And I remember I was like, and he was like, do you want to learn? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, first you're going to clean my car. So he gave me a real he gave me the real sort of like old school sort of like, oh, you want to go somewhere? Well, then first you got to, do me something. And then I would have 1 hour on his MPC and sort of slowly get my way around it. He'd show me some tricks, and sort of made me sort of be able to look into his kitchen.
So what was, because I know one of your first releases was with a group of guys. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so then I ended up, we ended up making some records. We ended up traveling. We ended up in Antwerp, and we ended up in Hamburg, and hung out with.
Just hang out in studios.
No, I mean, hang out in studios, but also
go to parties. And
there was a club in Antwerp called Café Daft, which was like an incredible.
Wow.
And it was,
you've been there. Wow.
Cooney and Steve Cox, I believe his name was, and there was a record store there called USA Import where you would buy the hottest records in the world, and so there was this whole just this environment, this scene, and it obviously was super small and very underground, and I ended up releasing a record on Wonka Beats, which was like, I mean, that was just like a dream. Like
was that the first one on Wonka?
Yeah, it was the first. My first ever record was released on Wonka. Yeah. And then after that, I had a release on Superstition in Hamburg. Which was also like a super legendary label.
You're going a bit fast now, because you made the track with some friends, and then you sent it to a label, and the scene was so small. It was like, okay, we're going to release it, and
I mean, I guess they liked what they heard, you know, or at least they thought it was decent enough to get to have a release. Yeah, maybe they enjoyed the energy that we brought in, or they didn't end up specifically becoming, big records. They were okay, but I guess they felt like, they should be, there's a room for this. So they gave us at that point a little platform and a little sort of like, hey, here's a little ticket.
And what was the scene like during that time in the Netherlands, in the whole world? I don't know where you.
I mean, well, to me, I mean, I obviously only knew. I mean, this is pre-internet, like years pre-internet. Yeah. So I mean, even calling Antwerp, I remember my dad was going like, "Dude, we have a 700 guilder phone bill. Like, how's this possible?" And I was like, "Well, maybe it's because I was calling my friends in Germany and in Belgium, to make a deal or to talk about something or to help each other, A&R a record or whatever. It was quite, it was crazy times. It was like, rickety cars and kind of like a counterculture type of thing, where it's like I was literally on the loose. I was, there's a certain type of freedom. So that's what it was. And everything that connected this was the music,
Yeah.
and the experience, and what a club could bring you, and what that journey could bring you. And you got to understand, this is like brand new. Like it hadn't happened before, so
No.
it was.
So well, now we're going to the moment that the Strictly Rhythm release was there.
Yeah, so I ended up living in The Hague, and
You were like studying then, or was it
No,
just...
no, it was just music kind of
Yeah,
sort of brought me
okay.
there, and I had these releases, and it was kind of like a slowly sort of like, hey, this is maybe something, and then I got a few gigs, and then slowly, and I was like, well, maybe Almelo is not really the best place to be, so I made a move and ended up in The Hague.
What was The Hague like? Was it with Exposure and I don't know?
It was Exposure, which was a legendary club, truly important in the foundations of Dutch dance music, I believe, and then The Hague was always a really interesting scene, because Amsterdam was always very quickly a little bit more glamorous and a little bit more outgoing, and it had obviously a really flamboyant gay scene, which was for DJ culture. Immediately also quite an outlet to be a part of, but also kind of restricting, because it kind of sort of directed you into a certain direction, because they would, the gays like to have some sort of flamboyant music as well, directing them and helping them. And then The Hague was a bit more, I guess, a bit more techno and a bit more
industrial,
a little bit more industrial, like Rotterdam. Rotterdam was obviously way more industrial, and you could hear it in the music, like 100%. Like
Absolutely.
Dimitri from Amsterdam would be like quite soulful and with vocals, and then Speedy J in Rotterdam would be like dark and sparse and industrial. So I started being involved with the label. The label started releasing my records. I ended up in a duo with a DJ from The Hague called Stef Vrolijk, and we had a project called SNS. And in '96 we released You Do Me Wrong, and it was my first, hit record. So it was the first one that traveled around the world, and I didn't know back then
because that's how it worked. Then other labels re-released it.
It was all territorial, because obviously pressing up a vinyl is quite costly, and then shipping it all the way around the world creates like an increase, because shipping costs are involved, and back then it was even more than it is now. And so an import record would be $25 for instance, and then if you would have a record that was pressed at home, it was $17. So the difference was enough for labels to go like, hey, you know what, I'll pick up this record, I'll pay the difference,
I'll press it for you,
and I'll press it for you. I'll stick it on my label.
I never thought about it, but that was really nice, because you had a lot of records on several labels. Oh, on what label you have it? Oh no, I have it like on the first label, the import, and
No, and as a matter of fact, like Eric Murillo back then, as Reel to Reel, made remixes of this particular record.
Okay.
And I remember back then I had Eric Murillo on the phone, which was kind of like a weird thing, because Eric Murillo back then was already like a big name because of Reel to Reel, and he had just had that hit record.
I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it.
Like he had a lot of other really great projects on Strictly Rhythm.
So that's early 90s then?
So it's 96.
Yeah,
it's 96. So having Eric Murillo on the phone, and I was like, oh my God, this little Sander from Almelo, and he's on the phone with this godlike figure, this like, and so all of a sudden, like I saw myself moving closer to that what at once inspired me so much. Those little beams of radio that got to me and inspired me of who I wanted to be and who I ended up being. We're slowly, becoming closer and closer to my own reality, and I started beaming back, I guess.
And then it was like producing and DJing.
I mean, it was
50-50.
This particular record was like a good stepping stone into the next phase. I remember I got really inspired by what happened to the whole scene around that time, because bands like Underworld, Daft Punk, Fluke, Chemical Brothers, they all came through the ranks in the late 90s, and it was so inspiring, specifically when Daft Punk broke through. It was like, oh my God. I mean, I had already seen and envisioned, that the DJ could be, and this scene could be something special, but it was still it was still a counterculture, and it was still underground to a certain extent. And then all of a sudden Daft Punk was like, well, but we can actually also make it fashion, we can make it overground, we can take over the world. And then, forward late 90s, I wanted to be a part of that. So I did a really ambitious album on a French label that completely tanked.
Oh.
And it really like...
Under Sander Kleinenberg?
Yeah, under my own name. And it was actually the first time I started producing under my own name.
Okay.
And it was really like... I had done it with Steph and with other people, and I'd always sort of be in a sort of like a congzi with, like...
So it was like a kind of filtered disco...
Yeah, it was kind of like a filtered disco, but it wanted to be everything. It wanted to be sort of like... And the Chemical Brothers and Daft Punk and Left Field.
Is it still online? Can I find it?
Yeah, you can find it online.
Okay,
yeah.
so what do you still remember a track? Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was a record called Penso Positivo. I remember working in Paris back then was incredible because hanging out with Ludovic Navarre and like a lot of people from the French scene who were really, really strong at that particular moment was very learnful.
Jacques Lacan,
Jacques Lacan, and I remember hanging out with Daft Punk and Armand van Helden at the Rex Club, and it was really wow. And I remember the A&R that became one of my great friends was in the bidding war to sign Daft Punk, and so it was to be so close to something so incredible. It was very, very great. But my album completely, like, it bombed. Like, it didn't do nothing. And I kind of sort of came back to the Netherlands going like, I kind of sort of ruined my opportunity. I had invested like a lot of time and effort into becoming somebody that I wanted to be. Yeah. And I came back to The Hague kind of with an illusion, I wanted to say with an illusion poorer, but that's really bad translation. But I kind of sort of like, I went out there and lived in Paris for a while and recorded that album, signed big deals, had like dinners with the director of Polygram France and stuff like that. And then I came back to the Netherlands and...
So you went back to The Hague,
and then
felt a little depressed.
Yeah.
And then
I made My Lexicon.
Exactly. That was what I was thinking. Then you made up like you came up with actually a new style because the whole well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the whole term progressive house didn't exist.
No, progressive house. Surely, I really want to say no. It didn't. I made it up. No,
I thought that no, in my head it was.
It was funny because there's obviously that record is seen as a one of the pillars of what progressive house ended up becoming, and for sure, progressive house became the dominant form of dance music, and it created the biggest stars in dance music at that particular moment in time. But it was, I mean, for a long time it was already kind of happening. I think. The mixture of time and place and stars and the traveling aspect of DJs, the rise of Global Underground as a platform, and that all sort of helped into catapulting this into becoming the dominant form of dance music at that particular moment in time. And so when I made My Lexicon, I was never really aware of the fact that it would become that sort of like staple of or fundament of a new sound. Like, I mean, and even today, like people would send me messages. I would never have expected that, but it was a very exciting record to be working on. I remember finishing it. Jorn from Spinning Records, one of the biggest A&Rs in the Netherlands right now, maybe even one of the biggest A&Rs in dance music. Was an intern at the label that I made it, and he was the first one at 9 in the morning opening up the doors of the office. And there was like 4 studios there, and one of those studios was mine. And he was like, are you already here? And I'm like, no, I'm still here. But you have to, because I'd worked all night on it. And I think you have to sit here and listen to this record. It was very, very exciting.
And he still noticed it, like, wow, this is...
he was like, oh yeah, this is incredible. Great. And then, but you know what? I think success is always has many causes. Like there's never really one thing that you can point out and go like, oh yeah, that's because of this. It was a mixture of time and place. The people that I knew, the people I at that particular moment also hung out with. I hung out with Sasha quite a lot back.
It's
back,
kind
back
of a
then.
Sasha track.
It totally is.
Yeah.
He put it on his Global Underground, and he put another record of me on Global Underground called Sacred, and then I was like, okay, and then I created it into a 4-track EP. And so it's, everything was kind of sort of like, it was the right time and the right place to come up with that record, and I can only look back and be very excited of what it was. It's also, I'm not gonna lie, like for a long time I was really something that sort of pushes you so high can be kind of a burden as well. And
of course,
like,
because you want to make My Lexicon too.
Well, yeah, either that or you want to move away and sort of, just be somebody else, because I think and that's the whole struggle that you always have as a producer or as a DJ. As a DJ, I want to evolve and play what I think is fresh and new and forward thinking and pushes this whole thing forward. And then as a producer, sometimes you make something that captures time so well that it sticks with you forever. But it kind of fights with the fact of being what is being a DJ all about. Yeah, so but lately I've been listening to it, and my wife as well, she comes to me and goes, dude, that's actually a really good record. And I'm like, okay,
fucking classic,
okay,
man.
it's a good record.
Yeah.
No, and so it's not a bad record.
But
on top of it all, it's also not a bad record. It's like it's pretty decent.
Yeah. What can you still remember of that time? Because My Lexicon became a big hit. You became like, I think, was that the first whole DJ Mag list?
Yeah, then? Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. 2 years later, also because of the dominant sound. You have to remember, like, DJ Mag lists consists of 5 DJs that you can choose from. Yeah. So it's like, oh, Sasha's number 1. Well, who's Sasha's, biggest, who's, and it's like, oh, well, we'll put Sander on 2. Yeah. They never probably heard me, but they was just like, and it's the same now. It's like, I love David Guetta. Oh, well, put Afrojack on, or the other way around, or you know what I mean? It's like that's the dominant sound always delivers the most DJs. Because of that.
Mention some places what were. Yeah, you went to Ibiza for the first time, I can imagine.
I mean, the whole thing just exploded. It was literally from like as if the light was turned on, and America, London, DJ agencies signed me up. The scene exploded under the wing of that sound. It became an international phenomena. I was the first DJ to DJ in Jakarta and in Pakistan, and just the weirdest places where you would go as literally as a pioneer. You would end up bringing your records, and so kind of everything started from press to the recognition, and Radio 1 gave me BBC, gave me a few awards for their for Essential Mix of the Year, and so this whole thing just. But
it wasn't that well organized and as big as it is nowadays.
No.
So can you still remember like a gig where you played and things went wrong in a funny way? If you look back now, do you think, oh my God?
No, yeah, of course not. There's many gigs where I would be in a car for 3 hours in the jungle of Colombia. Okay. And you get there and it'll be like, well, actually the military just raided the whole place, and it's and it's like and actually the party was thrown by so and such, and he's now arrested and never to be seen again, or DJing in Beirut and hearing a bomb go off and have the start of some really bad times actually in the Middle East, and or in Juarez in Mexico, where you would hear gunshots, but also obviously the greatest now I'm
it wasn't all war.
It wasn't all war and disaster, but just the scale of it was and the leap, so to speak, for me was incredible. And to be honest, it took quite a toll on me emotionally.
I can imagine.
And being the first and being like a guinea pig of what it meant to live in 4 time zones in a month. Mm-hmm. I don't think, apart from maybe some pilots and maybe some politicians, there weren't, this is 20 years ago, I don't think there were a lot of people who lived that lifestyle. And the world wasn't really connected as it is today. I couldn't just call your mom would be like, a fortune,
too
or
expensive.
Expensive, or cell phones didn't really particularly work everywhere. It was quite quite the journey and quite the road to.
But
pace,
if you say
know?
it like this, there was a moment when it almost went wrong, or
No, absolutely.
Yeah?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
I had a hard time emotionally and psychologically to deal with the repercussions. I remember the internet obviously also blew up in the same sort of era. So message boards and the notion of fans or people who follow you, the sort of direct interaction that
so it
you
was
had
quite new.
was totally new.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like
okay.
I had no defense system to someone from Toronto saying, "Yeah, dude, you suck. You know, you were really great 2 years ago, but now you suck." It's like, whoa, I'm just I'm just a dude who trying to do. It's like it was really it was quite and apart from that, I made like more money than I'd ever dreamt of making.
Yeah.
And that came with lots of responsibilities that I also had never really anticipated to deal with.
No.
I was just chasing a dream, and
and then suddenly you became
and then
famous
all of a sudden
and,
it's like this mad ride,
and what you stayed here in Holland, still in The Hague, or you...
I ended up moving to London for a good couple of years, like a year and a half, and which was great, but I kind of missed my studio. I was kind of depressed living there because I didn't have a lot of friends, and that didn't really feel that well, I guess. Although what I do have great and fun memories of is touring in the UK, because that was a lot of fun. Like the UK has a great music scene, and going from Newcastle to Liverpool to Manchester to just everywhere was really a treat. But musically, I mean, you have to imagine, like I just had mentioned, the studios were meaty. I was really used to that studio that I made those records in, and then all of a sudden I was on an airplane. You couldn't bring a meaty studio on an airplane,
not,
and laptops were like 20 minutes, and then your battery was dead, and they couldn't do a percentage of what you can do nowadays. So. Being on the road kind of also meant that creatively you would be in a standstill because you couldn't kind of sort of keep evolving.
So it was like, or you were producing, or you were like.
Well,
touring.
for instance, some of my colleagues were like, you know what, I'll just use a producer at home to continue working when I'm on the road. And I was like, you can't do that. That's cheating. You can't like have a what? You have a producer at home who works when you, but that's not you. Then that's then somebody else. So it kind of sort of those things that are now like normal and understandably so, like, of course you're going to work with a producer or with an engineer or somebody who helps you process that into. Back then, I mean, I remember the first DJs with tour managers. I mean, me and like all my colleagues, and we were like top 20 DJ men.
Yeah.
We're like the fucking biggest DJs in the world.
And
we would look at a few of those DJs and go like, you heard that dude? He has a tour manager. Like, honestly, how sad must you be to have a tour manager to carry your records around? This is the saddest thing ever. You can carry your own records, Yeah. And that's kind of like the attitude that we had. And then obviously now the way that it all professionalized and the way that it morphed into today started then. And obviously that's the way to keep a brand in the air, and that's the way to keep things going.
Yeah.
And so this whole struggle, this whole identity, this whole sort of being pulled between sort of what it takes to be an international brand with recognition, and also be having sort of the kind of sort of peer acceptance, or even the peer sort of the sort of idea that you're still cool. I don't know how to explain that, but it's like that sort of balance between the pressure of what all these elements want were very, very strong, and it kind of sort of pulled the scene in two parts, and one of them really learned how to adapt with that and changed and morphed it into what it became. But a lot of people were totally stuck and were like, okay, well, we don't know how to adjust. We can't give up our principles. We can't give up our cool, so to speak, to stay relevant in that journey. And but I mean,
Never
everybody
thought of it that way.
everybody found their place. And then the most interesting thing is during all of this, there was another revolution going on, which was the digital revolution. And all of a sudden, it's like producers started making music with just a laptop.
Yeah.
And it's just like you can't have emotion from a laptop. Like you have to have the machines, the machines, man. You know, just like what the drummers told us. Like you can't have emotion in the samples. We were like, but you can't have emotion if you don't tweak the machines. You know, it has to be some sort of like, you know what I mean? So that sort of whole cycle sort of repeated itself. And I think digital, the way from a sound technician point of view, the way that you produce within a digital environment is definitely different from producing in an analog or MIDI analog environment. It's almost like as a painter in an analog environment, there's somewhat more freedom and you can kind of get away with a few things. And in the digital environment, it's just a lot more mathematics. Yeah, it's less freestyle. It's more sort of, you have to be structured and you have to be
clean.
There's no wonder that people like Deadmau5 and the nerdier type sort of dudes became like these like superstars, you know, because it was like that approach, that sort of real, like almost like mathematician approach was really what was needed. And remember, you know, Sasha was like a bona fide pop star. He was a rock star, you know. He was like doing loads of drugs, and he was like he was like a fucking guy, he was like a god, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
that's how he was seen. And then
so I don't know what you know because you made that track. So the fruit is that with a lot of analog stuff, or is it like digital only? Because it sounds, of course, but that's house music. It sounds real digital.
Yeah, well, funny enough, so I ended up working with a bunch of producers to maintain that sort of identity. Yeah. So I moved away from being in control of my own destiny because I had to hire other people to maintain that type of quality. Okay. And not only the type of quality, but also the output, just generally, like the time and the
because you were touring,
because it was just touring, and it's like there was no way I could do all things. No. And I would end up being in the studio with them, you know, till like 4 a.m, 5 a.m. But that could be from Tuesday to Thursday. Yeah. And then on Friday I'd be on a plane again, going somewhere. Yeah. And then they would continue to work, or I would hope that they continue to work. But that was.
So the fruit was a process with a lot of guys. That's what you're saying.
So the fruit was a process with the guys behind LSDJ and the guys who ended up becoming Dash Berlin. And it was really, the timing was perfect because they had done LSDJ and their approach was a bit more commercial and a bit more sort of formulaic. And I always wanted to do that type of music, but I had never really had the structure. No. And they were very structured. Yeah. They were, they'd be like, okay, it's 9 o'clock, let's go to the studio. And I was just like, it's 12 o'clock, I had to be at the studio at 9. That's more my sort of approach. But us together was magic, and the fruit, I think I always wanted to make a record with a rave sound, with a gabber, Dutch sort of rave sound. But I wanted to make it funky. I wanted to make something that so I brought in all the juice and all the flavors and the John Fugler, who's the singer of Fluke, and brought him in for the vocal and that they were just structured enough to give it the direction that it ended up becoming.
And then you were hearing a track, you said, no, a bit more of that high sound.
No, exactly. No, and I mean, and obviously musically, I mean, I can play, I can do anything that I want. But in that digital environment, they were more organized. They were more structured. Yeah. And that resulted in that record. But you have to imagine, if you make My Lexicon and then 4 years later or 3 years later, you release The Fruit, there's a lot of people who are going to go like, okay, dude, like what happened? Yeah. Like you were this like melodic god, making these like epic trance records.
Yeah, like we mentioned, a founding father in progressive house music.
Exactly.
And then it was more like, well, do you call it electro? I think so.
I think it was. I mean, for me, you see, to me, and I don't want to say this in an arrogant type of way, but My Lexicon was something that sort of morphed from something that already existed. Like there were records around that already sort
like
of
such
touched and directed and had some sort of. So it was like it was an inspired record by a scene and by a direction.
Yeah.
But the fruit was truly, I believe, fresh.
It's the junk that makes the junk house.
I think it was it morphed just so many things together, and it brought so many things together, and not only the UK and the Netherlands, but also Gabba with Mass at Work. It was just it's a record I'm extremely proud of. Because it was so. It was just so. I mean, it was so fresh.
You can still play it. It's like timeless.
Yeah.
And I know what you say, because My Lexicon is a classic, and in a sort of way, of course, classics are always timeless. But it's really like the sound of that moment.
Yeah.
And I know there were some remixes later on, and the song is great.
Yeah.
But the fruit is
No, and I remember Pete Tong playing it for like 18 weeks straight on Radio 1. Was really and that was really something. I really felt like, okay, I have really hit something really exciting.
Yeah.
But then I got carried away, and then touring again and picking up paychecks and and then it's just got Maybe I should have stuck to that for a bit longer. I should have done an album or something more
with that sound.
Yeah, with that sound. I probably should have.
Yeah.
But I did This Is Miami not too long after that, and that did well. It was never intended to be released. It was literally a record I wanted to play at Ultra Miami, and that was what that record was about. And it was kind of like, I'm not really sure if this is. I kind of knew that record was really a sort of goodbye to, underground, accepted, sort of culturally relevant. This is like truly like, this is like a parody record almost.
This is not Toronto. This is not proud.
And I was really happy with it because it made so many people so extremely happy back then.
Yeah.
Pre-internet again, the numbers at the moment don't really reflect what that record did at that particular moment, because it was a fucking big, big tune. And to be honest, really, like, I got lost like at that sort of 2007, 2008. I still had a lot of success in America. But by the time come 2010, my identity was like, I got so much sort of backlash of people that sort of went like, he used to be amazing, but now he's like, which is understandably so. I have no hate towards that, but I was just like, honestly, on a journey, trying to sort of find who I am while everybody was watching, and that's like, and the innocence kind of sort of like, it kind of hurt me.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like, my girlfriend is quite famous in social media, and she's going. It's funny how the parallels are, because social media is obviously coming through now in the last 3 years. Influencers have become like the new DJs, and it's like it's become this whole.
Absolutely,
and it's kind of funny how a lot of the same sort of moments repeat itself, like how the world sees these people, how they react to that, how they deal with the pressure, and it's kind of like the same here. I at that point was like, okay, I just need to start all over again at some point. And then but then again, you're not 20, it was quite
and the whole I think that was the moment EDM wasn't electronic dance music anymore. It was like a genre.
No, dude. I remember Calvin Harris calling me a week before his first show in Pasha. Like, that was his first his first DJ show back in 2010, I guess it was.
And you had a resident there?
Yeah, I was a resident at Pasha on Fridays. Yeah. And he would call me and go like, okay, I'm so excited. We should do a record together. And I was like,
Harris, Calvin.
Dude, not now, man. I'm so busy at the moment, So it's like, no. The respect was 100% mutual. But it was like, I'm trying to point at is that from David and everybody else who sort of like stormed through and became who they became, they were obviously they took this whole thing to a place where I can bring it anymore. Like my juices and my energy were just ended right there and then. So and in a way, it's a really, if people ask me like, hey, you see Martin Garrix, do you feel any sort of like, not hate, but do you feel oh, it could have been you, or you should have done things different? And I'm just like, no, I think when I look at Martin Garrix, I'm like, I'm really proud of what he is, because I know that parts of him is built on a fundament that I've been a part of.
Exactly.
And that's something to be extremely proud of. Just the fact that I've been able to be so close to something so relevant, and that has touched so many people is an incredibly humbling experience. And
it's great. That's for the listeners, and it's more for, I don't know when you are listening or watching this, but before we started this podcast, we're here in your studio, and you let me hear some of your new stuff.
Yeah.
And that's it's so refreshing, and it's so the build up to what we are talking right now, because it's still it's still new, and it's people have to hear it, but it's coming. Okay. When I'm talking to you now, I'm like, oh wow, this is such a great story.
Well, maybe, maybe. I'm,
and if it's not, then it's
if it's no. Listen,
you have to you do what you have, and that's the difference between like a salesman and a real artist. I think,
right,
is if you have the real, not only the passion, it's like the need to do.
Yeah,
what you feel is the artistic.
No, 100%. Yeah. But also a lot of people that don't we have to understand that there's also people who crash and burn in that, and I'm fully aware of the fact that there is people with that ambition who simply don't have the in the end of the day, I've been fucking fortunate. There's a lot of things that I would have never held possible happened to me in my life, and but I've also, and this is, I can truly say, and I think I'm old enough and wise enough to say I've never taken it for granted, and I've always used that energy to keep on pushing, even if it was into a direction that maybe the world didn't want to go into. But for me, it was a really an amazing rite of passage, and gave me all the tools that I have today to raise my children, to make music, to keep innovating and keep doing me.
But if you say it like this, I have to mention it. Besides his, of course, personal problems, and every person is not a person, but if you say so, you can really understand what happened to a guy like Avicii.
Absolutely. No, I mean, dude, I knew him when he was working on levels. He'd send me the demos back and forth. We would be on iChat, and it's like I knew him for specifically in the first 2 years of his career when he broke through. I remember Ash and him coming up to me and going like, dude, because we DJed together at some festival in Utrecht of all places, and I was in between Hardwell and Avicii.
Wow. That was a great time.
It was just two kids. Like, who are these fucking kids? This is like 16. This dude's 16. Yeah. Like Hardwell was like literally 16. And he's like, I'm such a fan. And I'm like, you're amazing. You're like, and I'm like, dude, like go do your thing. Anyway. And Avicii playing there, and I think he just released. He hadn't released levels yet.
So you kept contact with him.
Yeah, kept contact, and went on tour in Australia, and then we obviously hung out on a few occasions. I mean, he's the same type of energy. The same type of sort of I want to change things. Someone who stands at a stage at Ultra in Miami. And goes like, you know what? I'm just gonna be doing a country and western vibe here that no one's potentially gonna understand, and having a lot of people go woo, and then just sticking to it, and then having that sort of become like Grammy award winning multi-million grossing career change is obviously quite heavy for shoulders to carry, and he. In a scene that was maturing, and in a scene that was sort of becoming grown up, he was definitely a victim of the greed and of the machine that just wanted more and more out of its stars and out of its front runners. I mean, obviously, in the core of who he is, there was always that sort of
Exactly,
seed
that's,
and that insecurity, and you can't blame the system.
No.
You
No,
know,
but
but-
you call it a machine, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
And well, you had it before, but it was like a new machine, and the
Yeah.
machine was during his time
It was
like-
bigger, absolutely,
yeah,
100%.
So
yeah.
it was all
No, absolutely.
5 times
yeah.
heavier. Yeah.
But even, I mean, looking at, listen, in the end of the day, this is black music. You know, this is black music out of the ghettos of Detroit and Chicago and New York. This is music that was made, it was the poor man's disco. You know, and let's not forget the dozens of ambitious young black folk who wanted to make a difference in music that also didn't make it. You know, who were truly pioneers, who truly, you know, just using like minimum resources and trying to make the best out of it. Because that's what house music's all about.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a counterculture of, you know, the poor man's disco. It's
making
like,
it in the garage.
Yeah,
and,
making it in the garage. That's why it's called garage,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about music. I ask you to, and I know with any DJs, like it's a random thing because 5, which 5 you have to pick. And the funny thing is, you sent me the links, and I clicked on one, and I was like, no, I don't want to know it. So I know one,
Okay.
and that's
cool.
one the last one in the link list, and I was like, oh, that's funny because that's the name of this podcast. That's Can You Feel
that's
It?
right. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah. Oh,
I didn't even know.
Yeah.
That's super funny. I went through literally 25 Todd Terry records
Okay.
because I was like, okay, which one? Oh, this is so crazy. Okay, this is
Okay, let's start with that
but
one,
this is
because
a bit
the
of a
order-
sad coincidence.
No, yeah, that's great.
but it is a coincidence. It is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
coincidence.
Yeah. So it's a random order, I guess. Or
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
start with CLS. Can You Feel It?
I mean, Todd Terry, for instance, is somebody who took. He started in 86, 87, and he was in the middle, in between the R&B and the house and the disco, and it's sort of like he was right at the crossroads of all that. And in those crossroads, he made a few, I mean, records that are going to stand the test of time forever.
Yeah.
I met him in about 5-6 years ago. He went to a show of mine. No, actually, it's longer. It's about 10 years ago. He went to a show of mine in Miami during the Winter Music Conference. And he hadn't been involved in the scene for a while, or at least he wasn't very proactive or in the forefront. And he was in my booth all night, just like grooving away and being very, very excited about what I did. And to me, this was just like, I mean, there's a few moments when people were in my booth where I was like, okay, this is insane. P. Diddy, I had Stevie Wonder in the booth once, which was absolutely insane and ridiculous, talking to me, and sort of that was wild. But this one was also like, I can't believe that the one guy that I listened to back in 87 on the radio is now in my booth and grooving to what I'm mixing together. Kind of sort of made me very humble and sort of very so the point is he's a legend, and I'm very happy that he's doing well again. And when I met him, he wasn't in a really great place. I went to his house, which was upstate New York. It was a bit sort of a rundown thing. It was kind of tragic, and it was really, really incredible to see him sort of be where he is today.
Yeah.
And he took me around New York, and we went to his favorite restaurant, and it's just wild. But he's just a legend. You know, he's just one throughout the ranks and through all the last 30 years.
And Can You Feel It is just, that's one of his classics.
Yeah, but it's also, it was a big record in the Netherlands as well, because it had this sort of ravey, stabby vibe to it.
Yeah.
And because it was kind of sort of like ghetto electric, you know, and it was kind of it was like an uncompromised kind of sound.
Absolutely.
And this record particularly was quite, I loved it.
Yeah. And of course, when you made another track with the title "Can You Feel It," was like this in your head, right? The track with Gwen McRae, because I don't know, it's not.
No, I mean, listen, when Future House sort of broke through, and when it became a sound, I was very excited because I felt like, okay, this is going to be the moment where slowly the sort of really amplified EDM thing is going to be brought
Back to
back
normal,
into well, normal, but at
normal,
least
yeah, well,
brought
yeah.
back into, let's just say, something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And maybe me stepping into it was maybe weird for other people because I did Can You Feel It and did a big remix for Halsey and Madonna. My remix for Madonna
Oh yeah.
a couple of years ago was in that sound as well. And maybe
Yeah.
people were like, well, why is he so involved? But I enjoyed it because it was, to me, I wanted to sort of help create the warmth again and sort of it sounds weird from an average white guy, but bring the blackness, I guess, back into
the soul,
dance music and the soul. Yeah. And, very exciting sound and very exciting to see young kids who had never heard of Todd Terry and never heard of the Roots
Yeah.
be introduced again to the sound
Okay,
by
so
means of this.
Yeah.
Can you feel it?
And maybe I should have waited a bit longer to make it.
No.
But it was very exciting.
Almost
to
like
yeah.
a teacher.
It's very exciting. Yeah. I did realize, like, stepping into it from where I came from, that moment there was a lot of people kind of looking at me going like, okay, well, who are you? As like 21-year-old producers were like, oh, okay, but what? I've never heard. Oh, so what do you do? And I'm like, I've been around for a bit and this and that and so. But that's cool though.
That's a great compliment.
And it's also humbling.
Yeah.
To be able to done that. Yeah.
be there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was the first one I clicked on, and
Yeah.
so what are the other four?
Well, you would have to click.
Oh,
on
I have
them.
to
What was
click,
that?
you
Yeah,
know,
I guess.
okay.
No. I mean, I could say Underworld with Skyscraper.
I see God talking.
So let me think about that. That was the whole. Was that on the EP with Dark and Long, or was it?
It was Dub No Bass with My Head
exactly.
album.
Yeah.
And Underworld took this music and this culture, this rave culture, made it kind of intellectual, kind of left-wing, and brought it to the big alternative pop stages of the world. And it was a really great and exciting development of this music being morphed into kind of like a more of an intellectual is a bit of a maybe a weird word,
alternative,
but it's an alternative intellectual way, and it was just very exciting that music had such a powerful place as well on those stages.
And why that track? Because it's not like
because I got so high on that record.
Oh, okay. Well, that's an answer.
I mean, I remember when I see Elvis, I was like, yeah, man, I see Elvis.
Okay.
You know?
Okay, great.
No, it's just that record. It's just it's just like the energy is just wild in that record, man. It's like, and it's just the drive and and then 30,000 feet above the earth. It's like, oh man, and then it's a beautiful, but that's just ecstasy to me, and it just summed up everything of the '90s. Like everything, it was just in that record. It was incredible.
Yeah, still a great band.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I clicked on another link. So Squarepusher.
Yeah. Squarepusher, Jenkinson is his name, right?
Yeah.
He he's obviously like the just one of those like truly gifted, wildly talented, incredible, but totally
crazy.
No, I don't think he's crazy. I think
No.
he's just way forward into everything, and this record shows just how far ahead of everything else and everybody else he was. He done an album called Do You Know Squarepusher, and it's basically like 9 tunes of him putting a needle on sandpaper and recording it, and then that's like, one of the. But there was this one record, which is the title of the album, Do You Know Squarepusher, which is just, I can't even, like, listening to the record now, it like totally, it makes me like wildly emotional, and it's just so fresh. And it's still fresh, and it will be fresh forever. And this is like a lot of the sounds that he uses were so futuristic back then. They're still futuristic now, but there are a few producers who are toying around with them. But it was only like 10 years later when people started to fuck around with the way that he used tone and the sort of
I
detune.
see a comment under this because you sent me some YouTube links.
Yeah.
There's a comment. I don't know if it's true, but I can. Skrillex listened to this stuff when he was younger.
No, it's 100%. Like it's this is 100%.
Yeah.
But then made with equipment.
Yeah.
Where coming to that type of intelligent programming just requires. I mean, I don't even want to know how many hours there were in that. It's the same as William Orbit. I was kind of thinking of using a William Orbit record. I think Ray of Light is a masterpiece as well. And but I just choose this to stay on subject.
I really understand now why you made the fruit.
Okay.
Because not that it's not like a sound alike, but it's like, well, you can still play them both. They are both futuristic tracks.
Yeah.
In
the end of the day, like if anything, I surely hope that something is gonna stand the test of time. And if you as an artist can be involved in something that kind of lives forever, or at least for a decent long time, then that's the greatest accomplishment, you know.
Okay, I click on a new one. It's like a game.
Right.
Daft Punk.
Well, when we touched about it.
Yeah,
we touched upon it. Like when Homework came out, to me, that was also from from what was possible in the scene and just where the limitations of or the lack of limitations was
exactly,
was really shown by them, because they took underground electronic instrumental music, which I also should add was incredible. I mean, there was a few back then, but there was obviously not a lot
and
of
played on the radio.
And played on the radio.
Exactly.
It was incredible. Homework obviously just opened up a whole new way. And in a weird way, to be quite honest, it held like a kind of promise that maybe even only recently was fulfilled with Daft Punk's recent success.
Mm-hmm.
I think the seeds of that, or the possibilities that Homework sort of laid out, were only put into fruition when they did the Weekend and and those the big Pharrell record. And
so then it's like already time for the last one, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's In Sync.
So In Sync, the record's called Storm.
Yeah.
And I believe that that record really, I think it's the bass line which is really funky. Basically, Storm In Sync is an underground record. It's like a techno record.
Yeah.
It has a funky bass line. But the record was just, it's 92 or 91. And it was just, I don't know, it was just one of those late night jams that I just listened to over and over and over and over again.
You played it as a DJ a lot?
Yeah, well, I played it as a DJ a bit, but it's very obscure, and it doesn't really gel. I think it is some sort of classic. Probably some big name is behind it. I'm not sure, but it just meant a lot to me, because it was a funky bass line. So yeah, it was kind of like a dubby R&B-esque sort of like mixture of different things. I'm a big fan of bass lines. Mm-hmm. If you listen to that bass line and you listen to some of my later remixes or whatever, you would find that type of sort of disc bass like is something that regularly comes back to me. And it was like one of the earlier sort of renditions of that sound, and truly enjoyed it. And but I could have done something by Mauricio Basic Channel or one of those Berlin guys. To me, like, I had hours and hours and weeks and months of listening to that vibe over and over again, because it was so body,
great. Okay, and of course we talked a bit about your own productions, about the big names, the big titles. What are any other, for you, tracks that you're really proud of, and remixes? We haven't talked about remixes, but first about your own productions.
I mean, I think with production, and and DJing, there's always been this battle of what I wanted to do as artist is a really big word, but what I wanted to do as a creator, and what it was required for me to do as a DJ, or what my DJ career wanted for me. And those two were in a constant sort of friction. So I did make a lot of remixes for some big American,
real big
pop
names.
stars. Yeah, in a time when remixes were that was like a big scene. There was like literally like in America there was like conferences around, built around like the remix culture, and being a part of that and doing that was incredible. So around 2003.
Let's do a bit of name dropping.
So Justin Timberlake, remixed Rock Your Body, remixed it to #1 in the Billboard.
Yeah,
I remember
the remix was on one. Yeah,
#1 in Billboard. I remember Pete Tong telling me, "Why are you remixing these American pop stars?
Yeah.
Like, why are you taking
because it wasn't credible?
Your talent?" It wasn't credible. No.
Wow.
And I was like, because Pharrell Williams is a future superstar. I love what all these young producers are doing with R&B, and I just love these records.
And was it like, and maybe that's every time in another way, but for example, like with Justin Timberlake, was it like, okay, here's the song, here are the several lines, do your thing, or was it?
No, the A&Rs back then, first of all, you got paid pretty decent for doing remixes. Now it's like, okay, do a remix
for free.
It's good for your name. And then it was like, here's $25,000.
Okay, bum.
Do that mix.
But do whatever you want.
No. It was heavily A&R, specifically by the Americans.
Okay.
It would go back and forth. They go like, oh, change this, change that. It was like, there was some compromise to be made. And compromises were, there's a few mixes that didn't end up being released because the compromise is it's just like, sorry, this is just too much. Specifically, when a chorus, which is usually a chord change, has to be sort of morphed into a club record, it can completely destroy the vibe, because it's like the repetitiveness of the same key is what is key. Pardon the pun. So there were definitely some elements of friction, and A&Rs would be heavily involved. So Justin Timberlake, Eurythmics, Janet Jackson.
Janet Jackson was also
NERD,
a big one.
NERD, Madonna. it's been a Daft Punk. There's been a whole array of mixes.
And with NERD, was it because I can imagine then if there was like somebody who has to say about it, then it was Pharrell. Pharrell would sign off on it. Okay.
And I remember around that time, 2003, I kind of sort of envisioned like, hey, we have to bring this, the club culture into modern production. Like I believed back then that Justin Timberlake and me should be in the studio and make a record and like do something fun. Yeah. That could live in a club but also be on a radio. And I remember talking to the A&R of Justin at Jive and go like, dude, but Justin should do a Donna Summer type I Feel Love type of record. We should do like a 9-minute version of something where he would just pop up after 5 minutes and do some like and he would just be like, dude, you're crazy. And I'm like, no. And he's like, no, management will never, will never, so it's like this always this uphill battle. And Forward Flash, Will.i.am and David Guetta, and then Jive was literally. I'm not sure if it was Jive, but it then happened. But we kind of all sensed, and I'm not the only one. We all sensed like someone's going to snap up, some pop star, and is going to translate this into a really great sort of new era of pop music. It was on that sort of cusp of it being observed by pop culture in a broader sense, and to see Calvin Harris become Quincy Jones is incredible, to be honest. And it's gone maybe even further than I had envisioned around 2003. But at that point, I was like, oh, it would be so cool if Justin, he worked with Pharrell and he worked with Timbaland. Why not do a really amazing club record? And I was even talking to him like, hey, it should be like a white label. We shouldn't say anything about it and just release it. And then, everybody speculating about it, be a really great little buzz. So that era was exciting, and working on those mixes was extremely exciting. Is there a remix
you're like most proud of, not because of the big name, but just because of the fact you think, hey, I really made it a better song or another.
No, I think the Justin Timberlake mix was pretty dope because it's still kind of fresh as you hear it now, and that bass line. Dance me. Although it was like obviously it was Pharrell's bass line, but making it into the bass line that we morphed it into. It was extremely fun and hearing it
still
everywhere.
Played on mostly I know American radio.
Yeah,
they played a lot. When it was there, I heard it and it was like on a kind of a dance channel. But
sure, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and then the question: Holland is a really small country.
Yeah.
Why do you think our dance music and our DJs are so successful all over the world?
Because we are we're deep into the origins of the Netherlands. We are a trading nation.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to speak a foreign language to make ends meet. We don't have a really strong, powerful youth culture ourselves. So we are influenced by the dominant youth cultures around us, which is Anglo-Saxon, France, and Germany. And we meet somewhere in the middle, and I think that middle is exactly where it's found.
That's a great answer, man. You really thought about this.
Yeah, no, I have. Yeah, no, absolutely, I have. And I think that's why we are who we are. And also we're online. We invest in, used to invest or still invest in youth culture and support the youth.
Yeah.
The radio that I mentioned.
Yeah, the open lot of
radio,
broadcast organizations. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of this has to do with accessibility, or had to do with accessibility because that advantage is gone.
Yeah. Do you still have any goals you would like to achieve in music?
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect of like standing still and looking back, I am most of the time looking forward.
Always,
and I feel like I still have a lot to do, a lot to prove. I kind of feel like everything that I said today is like a story that still has a few chapters.
Yeah,
and I'm working on materializing those into music and into something that can be inspiring.
A new chapter is coming. Can we already mention the name, or is it?
Yeah, no. I mean, I wanted to say before, and I didn't come to the point, was that, I started, because you asked me, are there a few highlights that you really enjoyed working on? And I did apart from the late 90s doing an album that didn't do really well, I also did an album 10 years later that also didn't do really well. Although one tune stood out, which was a record I wrote with Jamie Cullum.
Yeah.
And I remember
that was a great album.
And it was fun to work on, but it was also
a lot of Dutch, but people from all over the world, a lot of singers. And, but a great album.
Well,
one of my favorites.
Well, thank you. But it did lack. It was a bit naive. I mean, because I did it on my own label, and we're in the middle of sort of like still pressing CDs or not, or are we going to go only online and whatever. It was like kind of sort of lost in that whole sort of epic war that went on in the record industry. And being a small independent with an ambitious album like that, and I mean, I really put all my money into trying to make that happen, but it wasn't meant to become the thing that I hoped it to be. Although when I listened to the Jamie Cullum record, remember when I listen to it now, I'm like, this is actually not bad.
Remember when back then you and me and our friends?
No, not at all.
And so
maybe it was again a bit too early. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if I listen to maybe. I mean, it could be. But the point is, what I wanted to say is like the battle between me as a DJ and me as a producer or as a writer had become such a. I wanted to sort of bring it all together and be that one thing, and it's just like people just don't. They just don't. You can't put that all into.
They want to put it in a box and like.
If you want to sell something, and you want to sell soap, don't try and sell pizza, because it's
Yeah,
like, it's like
if
you're
you
just
wanna
selling
like 'em,
soap.
yeah.
You're selling soap. Like no, and I didn't ask for pizza. Like you are Sander Kleinenberg, and you are a DJ. You're da 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 da, and I can battle that. And I can go like, well, but there's something really great and sort of like. But I thought, maybe I should just be like a lot of people, just take those ambitions apart, create different names for different elements and different directions. It's something I had never thought of, or I'm not so much of a strategist that I'm like, we got, because otherwise I wouldn't have called myself Sander Kleinenberg. You know what I mean? It's like the amount of times I had to go EINENBERG.
Not the best arts.
No, exactly. I should have called myself Sander Klein, or something, or Sander Burke.
Last question: how do you want to be remembered?
He tried really hard. We didn't understand him, but he sure as hell tried. No, I don't know. That's such a powerful question. How do I want to be remembered? I mean, positive? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want to. It's
Yeah, I can say a lot of things, but everybody has heard the whole story of you, and it luckily enough, there is no end, not yet.
No, not yet. No.
So I think people will say, "Oh man, he did a lot of great things, and he made pizza and soap, and that's great." Yeah. Hey.
That's.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
For your time.
You're welcome.
Sander Kleinenberg. More episode of Can You Feel It coming up. Share this podcast among your friends. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Twitter is GIELS. Oh, man. Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sander Kleinenberg, for your time. What a great guy. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said, share it among your friends if they like house music. And if you maybe have some idea who will sponsor us, because, we had this great KRK sponsor, but for the new series, I'm looking for a new sponsor. Feel free to contact me. Twitter is GIELS, or you can send me a message if you have the YouTube channel or the Facebook or the SoundCloud. You will find my email. Thank you so much. And next episode, oh man, a lot of requests about this thing in Holland called gabber music, like a hardcore, hardstyle kind of music. And one of the founding fathers of that particular music is Paul Elstak. Next episode, check it out.